Good morning and welcome to a very special interview show of the Pro. Today it's my pleasure to have Lieutenant General Balbir Singh Sandhu sir on our show. General Saab is currently the Vice President of the Indian Polo Association and has served as the head of the Army Service Corps as well as held several other prominent positions at the Indian Army. He is here with us to discuss the importance of the Northeast for India's national security. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time and a very warm welcome to the Pro.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I would like to start the discussion by asking that what is the strategic importance of the Northeast for India's national security?
Ritvik, firstly, thanks a lot for inviting me. Northeast is a very, very unique part of this country. And how did it come to becoming so strategically important? I think it's important to understand the history. Northeast was connected earlier with India through Bangladesh, which was erstwhile East Pakistan, and prior to independence, it was part of India's Bengal state, right? So Northeast that time was just a continuity of the Indian landmass. However, with the partition, the East Pakistan and the present-day Bangladesh got wedged between eastern part of India and thereby creating the Northeast. Northeast is very peculiar. It's about 7 to 8% of India's landmass and 3 to 4% of the population. And it comprises nowadays 8 states. Earlier it used to be 7 states, and we used to call it 7 sisters. Now they've included Sikkim as well, which is at the Chicken's Neck. Chicken's Neck is a 23-kilometer corridor which contacts the entire Northeast to the rest of India at Siliguri, which is in West Bengal. So imagine a landmass of 8 states, which is connected to India by only 23 kilometers, and it has 5,600 kilometers of borders with other countries. So you have a line of actual control with China, which is a disputed border. That itself makes it a very, very volatile situation. We have border with Bangladesh. We have border with Nepal, with whom our relations have been blow hot, blow cold now. Earlier, of course, we are traditionally very good friends. We have borders with Bhutan, who's a very, very friendly country to us. And we have borders with Myanmar. And Myanmar itself has been a very, very volatile state. It has the military junta. It had short term for democracy. Again, the military junta has taken over. And Myanmar connects the entire Southeast Asia to Northeast India or India to the Northeast. So one is, it is very sensitive from security point of view that you have a connect of only 23 kilometers. And you have 1/3 of India's borders, which are covered in the Northeast. And as anybody with a country of the size of China and power of China, and we have a disputed border, it certainly is strategically very important. It has got large amount of natural resources. However, it's not so well developed from the point of view of industry. Most of the things go from rest of India. So strategically, it is basically because of this location, it's very important, and we have disputed borders. And now that for last more than 10 years, we got very friendly relations with Bangladesh. Earlier, with the right-wing governments in Bangladesh, there was a major threat to India's internal security. A lot of support to the militants who could escape into Bangladesh. And so strategically, and since a large number of Northeastern citizens have been tribals earlier, there are a large number of insurgency movements there. People asking for independence, autonomy. So as a result, it is strategically very, very important to this country. And also, when we talk of India's Act East policy, which the current government has brought in 1991, the Look East policy was evolved by the Narasimha Rao government. So if you want to connect yourself to Southeast Asia, which are those tiger economies, again, the importance of Northeast India.
Okay, sir. So is the Northeast central to the success of India's Act East policy? What are your views on it?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Okay, how did this ACTIS come into being? Prior to 1991, everything hovered around two blocks: security blocks, economic blocks, and we, without confessing, we were non-aligned, and we continue to be still believing in multilateralism and non-alignment. But we had a tilt towards security pact with USSR. In 99, with breakup of Soviet Union, India was at the crossroads of strategic space. We didn't know which way to go. There, I mean, even our security arrangements were in a dilemma. We weren't so close to the Americans, and we didn't know. So that is the time India felt the importance of strategic autonomy or strategic independence and finding new friends where you could concentrate as India, because our economy also opened up. We became a little more confident. So that is the time the government of that time, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, called a thing called Look East policy. So that is the time we started looking towards. Earlier, we are also never touching countries like Myanmar because they didn't have democracy. And then pragmatism came into our policies, and we started looking at it. So started from Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and the countries of Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries. And because ASEAN countries are big economies, which, though the countries are very small. So that is the time we started looking at this. And if you remember, after Prime Minister Modi came into power, he upgraded this policy to make it Act East policy. It's just don't look East, Act East policy. And I think 2018 in Republic Day parade, all the ASEAN heads of states were called as joint chief guests of honor for the Republic Day parade, thereby highlighting the importance of Southeast Asia and the ASEAN to India. And also, when you look at security perspective, most of them have disputes with China, and they look at India as an anchor around whom they could express some of these reservations, though they're very careful not to annoy China. Yet, there is a common point, and there was a joint statement after the 2018 Republic Day, which was very carefully worded, not to hurt China, yet to give China a message that all these countries, along with India, and now, of course, much wider Quad and others, believe in rule of law, especially in the Asia Pacific and South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, wherever all these countries are affected. So that is why India's Act East policy, which has been upgraded from the Look East policy, gains importance. However, a point that is to be seen is, if you think that we're going to trade with these countries through our Northeast India, the biggest issue that you need to do is have manufacturing base over there. For this policy to succeed, if you want to use Northeast India as the springboard for India's Act East policy, then you can't pick up things from Myanmar or from Chennai or from Mumbai or from central India, transport it to, say, Manipur or Tripura, and then transport it to Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN countries. It will not be cost effective. It will be high cost of logistics. So I strongly believe that if you want to use Northeast India as a launch pad for India's Act East policy, then you need to have a manufacturing base over there. Maybe you have SEZs. Maybe you have joint SEZs with countries like Bangladesh. Myanmar at this stage, or Myanmar one day, at this stage is not, because the access to the Bay of Bengal is through Myanmar and Bangladesh, right? So if you, any place you want to progress, so despite the Act East policy, most of the trade with say Singapore and ASEAN countries is through the sea. And I personally would believe that if you have such manufacturing bases and we get access to the sea through the to the Bay of Bengal, through say Myanmar and Bangladesh, that would be the way to make India's Act East policy successful.
Okay, sir. So talking about the Northeast, so why is it so that Northeast seems to be isolated from the rest of the India? What are the factors behind it?
Okay. Besides the geographical factor that I explained, it's just connected with 23 kilometers with the rest of India. Second most important factor is that if you see most Northeast India has been the house to immigration over centuries. Most of the tribals who came from there, they came from further east, and some from even Pacific Islands, right? And so the culture differs a lot from mainland India. And Indian government, for whatever reason, positive or negative, has been trying to encourage tribals to live in their own traditional way for very long. Even now, there are something, I mean, very, very big number. I can't tell you the number of tribes and the dialects within Northeast. So if you, in fact, if you look at it, Nagaland will be totally different from those people of Manipur and or the tribals of Arunachal, all the tribals of Tripura, all the tribals of Mizoram. So one of the reasons, besides the geographical thing, has been their tribal affiliation, due to which they continue to stay at. The Britishers had introduced a thing called inner line permit. Their policy was also to exploit the areas of Assam, oil and tea from Assam. They did not want to disturb the tribals. So they, in fact, from that time, and it goes on till now also, for anybody from rest of the country to visit that area, he has to take special permit. So that's the second thing. So there was a physical, geographical isolation. There was a cultural isolation. And there was a social isolation, right? Because if you don't have others coming and interacting, right? So, and then also it was one-way flow for point of view of economy, right? So all these went there, and the raw material, of course, was coming up there. So these are the reasons which made Northeast, and language is also a barrier. And that is why, in fact, long back, I recollect one lady from Shillong came to us in Wellington. And she says, you're talking of integrating Northeast. Last evening in the party, somebody asked me, what currency do you use in Shillong? Right? So that's the ignorance. And in a place like Delhi, if you collect 100 people and tell them to name eight Northeastern states, or 7 out of 8, let me tell you, majority will fail. Right? And if you ask all the parliamentarians then the names of Northeastern states, they'll not be able to list them. So it is just them being out of radar. And also another factor that I can think of is, since they are comparatively thinly populated and they don't have too much of representation in the parliament, the governments over the years have probably not find it worth investing so much of time and effort and thing. However, there are a lot of steps taken by the government of India over the years. There's the Northeast Council, which is located in Shillong. There's a ministry donor, Department of Northeast India, something. It's a part of it's a ministry with independent charge. So a lot of effort is there. But these are the reasons which has kept Northeast a bit isolated from the rest of the country. Okay, a lot has been done. Things are on the right track, but it needs to be expedited.
Okay, so coming to the terrorism. So how big of a challenge is cross-border terrorism from Myanmar in maintaining peace in the Northeast?
Okay. Now let me first give you the reasons for terrorism, right? Or insurgency. Naga and Mizo insurgencies are one of the oldest insurgencies in Northeast, and they were the bloodiest insurgencies. They originated with their historical issues of asking for independent state. Mizoram insurgency was solved and they came onto the negotiating table, and ultimately the same MNF, Mizo National Front, which was spearheading the insurgency, ultimately formed the government. And ever since, this was in the 80s, ever since then, Mizoram has been peaceful. And it's one of the most enjoyable places. I've served almost about 10 to 12 years in Northeast, and I know each and every corner of Northeast, because most of my tenures, my extension of my jurisdiction was in 4 to 5 states. As a colonel, then as a brigadier, it was Nagaland, Manipur, South Assam, Mizoram, Tripura, Agartala. And as a young officer, I served in Arunachal, physically walking a large part of Arunachal, because I was in the infantry attachment at that time. I did a lot of patrolling, enjoyed myself that time. So basically, this tribal affiliation and secessionist aspiration that time gave rise to some internal insurgencies. And as time, Assam, the All Assam Students Union launched a movement in 1980-81 against a large number of immigrants, illegal immigrants into Assam. So that became the origin of Alpha, United Liberation Front of Assam, coming into being. And that became the reason for insurgency in Assam. So the Assam is burning, Nagaland is burning, Mizoram is burning, Manipur also started having insurgency, and they were inter-tribal things. It's a very, very complicated thing internally. And remember, in international relations, nobody spares a neighbor if you have a rival around. For sure, China has helped the insurgents in those days, and we probably might see more of it in the future, right? So the issue of how to handle insurgency, I think we have to put our own house in order. So your question regarding external support, yes, we have unsettled borders with China. We have a very competitive and little bit of frictional relationship with China. So they will grab an opportunity to do all this. So they have been doing in the past. I see them also doing it in the future. Coming to Bangladesh. Now, when I did my research on Northeast and I looked at it, 1971 war, whose we are spending now 50 years, was one of the greatest victory post Second World War, where the Indian Army got 94,000 prisoners of war, broke Pakistan into East and West Pakistan, created Bangladesh, assisting the Mukti Bahini. I worry to think if Bangladesh was East Pakistan and ISI had its bases, and like I told you, the kilometerage that we have as border, they would have not allowed us any peace. And on the other side, if you see in last now 13, 14 years with the present dispensation in Bangladesh, the Prime Minister is the Sheikh Hasina, the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and they have a very positive attitude towards India. All the terrorists have been handed over or captured, or they've been encouraged to surrender. And that's why you see comparatively much peaceful situation in Assam. Assam is the state through which all other states are connected. If there is turmoil in Assam, if there is a bandh in Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, South Assam, Mizoram, Tripura, they all starve. Arunachal, they all starve. Because Siliguri is Bengal. And if you see the map, in fact, it will be a nice thing if you put a map of Northeast for the viewers to understand hereafter. This turmoil in Assam was affecting all other states in their day-to-day living and economy. Bangladesh having good relations has solved Assam problem to a great extent. Bangladesh, having good relations, has also deprived these militants of their bases. Bhutan launched an operation All Clear in partnership with Indian Army. Myanmar doesn't hold anything against India, but the tribals on both sides have their own, and the insurgent groups have their own support. An operation was launched into Myanmar, but that problem will stay because they are themselves feeling insurgency, because it's a state with very primitive governance system. So that headache will stay, and which spills over into Nagaland and Manipur. So insurgency, my view on insurgency is, while you have to go with a very strong hand or the heavy hand on security force operation, but ultimately is the economic development and good governance which in the long run will dissuade people to support insurgents or their incomes.
Okay, sir. So it's a general belief that China actively supports the terrorist outfits based in Afghanistan to disturb India's internal peace. So what are your views on it? And of course, you talked about it, but can you please elaborate on that?
Okay, Afghanistan's may not be so much the Chinese angle via Afghanistan, it will be the Pakistani collaboration with the regime or with the militants, and giving them, like they've been speaking about, they need strategic, right? They
No,
had
sir.
Balakot,
So,
wherein, yeah,
actually, I asked about Myanmar. Like, it's a general belief that China actively supports the terrorist outfits based in Myanmar to disturb India's internal peace. So, what are your views on it? Of course, you talked about
okay,
it, but can you please elaborate? Yeah.
yeah. See, Myanmar actually is a place, like I said, facing insurgency itself from some of the groups. And China is the other neighbor of Myanmar. I wouldn't say outrightly, but yes, since we have anyone would like to use these pinpricks and their influences over this. So Chinese support to militants via Myanmar uh, cannot be ruled out, and there is evidence of them at times when you see in the media. But that will continue. But the government of Myanmar is well disposed towards India. Yes, China is giving them a lot of economic help. They're setting up an economic corridor transiting through Myanmar to the Arabian Sea. But Chinese, like I said, are likely to do more and more on this front in future. So if we have to set our own house in order, I would like to look inwards and the border to discourage people. And let me also tell you one thing. Militants are like fish in the water. If we have economic progress, development, and cohesiveness in the society, militants, if they don't get support from the locals, they cannot survive. So external bogey must be limited to a level, and we cannot, if we have rivals, we cannot expect them not to exploit our internal fault lines. So that's my view on China.
Okay, sir. So, how good are our trade relations with Myanmar, and does terrorism impact the trade relations between both countries?
India would like, in fact, if you see the trilateral highway which starts from Manipur via Myanmar to Thailand, there is another project called Skaladan project. We want to connect with their Sitwe port through their inland river and coming on to Manipur. The problem with Myanmar is that they are themselves not economically well developed, right? And we as a country are also not able to give them so much of support to make a difference economically. Myanmar would love to have good economic relations with India. Other problem is their other side neighbor is China, who kind of loads them with cheap goods. And we have talking of economic rivalry with China, we of course have to confess that we've been beaten by them, right? So Myanmar, we have border trade, by the way. Within 15 kilometers, I think up to certain number of items, you can keep trading freely without any any taxation issues, right? But I have seen at that place that place is full of Chinese goods, which are being again pumped into India through the illegal route. You can't imagine a golf set costing 7,000 to 8,000 over there. Otherwise, which is in the market, international market priced at 70, 80,000 or 50, 60,000. So our trade with Myanmar would be the key to start trading from there with the Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries. The problem lies that one is we don't have a very well developed manufacturing base in the Northeast ourselves. And two is Myanmar itself has got very, very primitive economic situation. So that is the biggest handicap.
Okay, sir. Yeah. So I would like to conclude by asking that what urgent steps are needed in order to maintain peace in the Northeast? Because in recent time, we have seen a lot of terrorist attacks in the Northeast.
No, recent times, there haven't been too many terroristic attacks in the Northeast. Number of attacks, of course, that Nagaland thing happened where they had a case of misinformation or it was kind of slip up, I would say.
But sir, aftermath was very horrifying.
So aftermath was there, but the main issue is that, like I said, it's been far too late for India to not have resolved the Northeast issues. I would say first thing that you need to do is build elaborate infrastructure. Integrate Northeast within the Northeast, say Arunachal and Nagaland and Assam and Manipur and A and B and C and D, E. So there's a lot of potential for economic activity synergy within the Northeast. Say what is produced in Arunachal is not produced in Manipur, right? And likewise, what are the talents of population in Nagaland, Manipur? They're tremendous tribal traditions and products that they have. Somebody has to take the initiative to integrate the Northeast within the Northeast. First thing that you need is infrastructure. The roads there are very, very bad. Of course, it's the bad weather which makes it tough because a lot of landslides and rain and because of the hills. But all said and done, you need to have a very, very world-class infrastructure. In world-class infrastructure will invite economic activity. Economic activity will discourage terrorism. The youth will have something better to do who would like to go and be a terrorist and float around in jungles, right? Once there is peace, there will be more tourists coming. And alongside, if you have the manufacturing base, if Southeast Asia can do it, why can't Northeast India do it, right? So I would say this coupled with governance. Currently, half the bureaucracy of Northeast stays in Delhi and they call it as suitcase bureaucrats. If you have proper accountability and transparency, and governance, one of the major issues, you'll be surprised, is corruption. Corruption, a lot of government funds are siphoned off to fund militancy. Now, if you sanction a project worth 10 crores, and out of which, if the militant is going to take about 40 to 50 lakhs, or 4 to 5 crores, or 40 to 50%, right? There is nothing left to be put into the project. And at times, this situation of turmoil suits everyone who wants to make money, right? So you have to check corruption, you have to bring in proper governance, have transparency and accountability of those who are in power, right? Have infrastructure, encourage tourism, agro-based industries. The best organic stuff can come from the Northeast. And you roll this whole thing into motion, there will be no place and no time with people for insurgency.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your kind views, and I'm sure our viewers will take a lot of insights from the same. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.